everyone! Today I am going to be doing my April and May wrap-up. I have been in like this really horrible reading slump for the past 2 months, so I didn't read much in April and I didn't read much in May, so I figured I would just combine them both together. In total, I believe I read about 8 books in April and May, so let's just get started with what I read. So the first book I read in April was Into the Gauntlet, which is the 10th and final book in the 39 Clues series, which you guys know if you've been watching some of my previous videos that I had reread / read for the first time the last few books in the series. I had read books 1 through 7 when I was a kid, and then I reread those and then read books 8, 9, and 10 for the first time this past few months. So I was super happy to finally finish up this story that I never got an ending to when I was a kid. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I think I gave that more because I was like, it's the final book, I have to give it a good rating, but I was a little bit on the fence about this one because it wasn't so much an ending as it was a setup for the sequel series, which I believe is called Cahill vs. Vespers, which I did start reading, but I fell into this reading slump, so I ended up just returning that book back to the library, and I'm going to pick it up some other time when I get back into the swing of actually wanting to read and stuff like that. Yeah, this wasn't quite the concluding novel that I was hoping for, but I still thought it was really good, and I am interested in picking up the next books in the sequel series. The next book that I read is Wolf in White Van by John Darnielle, I think is how you say his name. This is a book that I wouldn't normally pick up, but I heard about it on someone else's channel and it sounded pretty interesting. I'm not really sure how to describe the synopsis to you, but it's basically an adult novel that follows this guy who created a kind of like, I think it's sort of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing, but through the mail. So people like send in the move that they want to make. I think I've never played like those kinds of games before, so I don't really understand them, and then he sends back like what that led to in the game. So when the story opens, we know that something bad happened because of the game that he created, and now he's facing like lawsuits and court and stuff like that because of it. But the interesting thing about this story is that it's actually told backwards, so like the end of the story is really the beginning, and so we're going back through time. So at the beginning of this book, we know that something bad happened and we're kind of just seeing the repercussions of that, but we don't actually know what happened yet until we move backwards in time to when the event actually took place, if that makes sense. I ended up giving this book 2 stars as I just didn't really connect with the story too much. Like, the premise of a story told backwards was what really hooked me on it, but I just don't think I was into the actual story as much as I thought the way it was done was cool. The actual story just wasn't that interesting for me. And honestly, since I did read this back in April, and we all know I have a terrible memory when it comes to books, I can't actually remember exactly all the stuff I wanted to say about this book, but I did give it 2 stars. It was an interesting story to a point, but just not particularly for me, so it probably will be for other people, but it just wasn't for me. Next book I read was actually a reread, and that was Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is the 2nd book in the Lunar Chronicles. I decided that I wanted to reread the Lunar Chronicles starting with Scarlet because I had already read Cinder twice, so now I've read this one twice. I gave this the same rating as I did the first time I read it, which was a 4-star rating. Scarlet is definitely my least favorite book in the series, just because I'm not the biggest fan of Scarlet and Wolf as characters, so I just wanted to kind of go back to the parts with Cinder and Thorn because Thorn is my favorite character. But for like the first half of this book, I was really enjoying it even more than I did the first time, because I think now that I already know the characters, I'm already connected to them. I didn't have to like get used to being introduced to them the first time I read it, if that makes any sense. But then during the last half of this book is kind of around the time that I fell into my reading slump, so reading the last half of it wasn't as good, but if I wasn't in a reading slump, I think I would have really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'm hoping to carry on with rereading the series later this year, but for now I just need to get out of this stupid reading slump. The next book I picked up was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in the Grisha trilogy, which, if you guys don't know, I read the Six of Crows duology last year and I really loved it, but that is kind of like a sequel duology to this series. This is basically a high fantasy story where there are like normal people and then there are Grisha, which are people that have special magical abilities, and we follow a a girl who thought she was just one of the normal people until she finds out that she does have these magical abilities, and then goes to like train and learn her powers with the Grisha, but then she finds out that it's not all it's cracked up to be. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars, maybe like 4.5. I kind of knew I was going to love this book just because of how much I love Six of Crows, purely based off of how much I love the characters, and I feel like that's kind of what Leigh Bardugo is known for writing like these really amazing, lovable characters, and I definitely felt the same way about the characters in this book. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars was because the ending was a little bit off for me. I didn't really like the direction that the ending went in. Also, is a character in here called the Darkling that everyone seems to love, and just hearing other people talk about it, I kind of knew that I was going to also love his character, which I did until the ending happened, and then his character also went in a different direction than I wanted him to, but hopefully all of that will be redeemed in the second book, which I also had started, but again, reading slump happened, so I read like 25 pages and then ran out of time, had to return it back to the library, so I will get around to reading that next month. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Next book that I picked up was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. I have actually never read a Roald Dahl book before. I didn't even know until like the past few years that things like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Matilda or that kind of stuff were books in the first place. I just always assumed they were just films. So since I was in a really big reading slump, I just wanted something really easy to read, so I thought I would pick up this book because I had recently rewatched the Charlie and Chocolate Factory film by Tim Burton, and y'all know I'm a really big fan of Tim Burton films, but I didn't realize how much I actually liked Charlie and the Chocolate Factory until I watched it this last time, because it had been quite a few years since the last time I'd seen it. So I read the book and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this so much more than I thought I was going to, and I definitely think it was because I could picture the Tim Burton film in my head, but I really enjoyed it, and I think it gave me a new appreciation for the Tim Burton movie because it is almost word for word for the book. Like, even the songs that the Oompa Loompas sing in the film are the same lyrics to the songs that are in the book, which it blew my mind. I had no idea. It also made me wonder what the heck they were doing with the first adaptation of the book, because like, what was up with the golden goose when it was like squirrels the whole time? Like, I don't understand why they changed that kind of stuff, why they did it the way they did it, but whatever. But like, no shade for that movie. Obviously I watched that all the time when I was a kid and it's still a classic for me, but I do definitely enjoy and appreciate the Tim Burton film a little bit more just because of how much it stuck to the book. So I then moved on to the sequel, which is Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which I didn't even give this book a rating because, and I think there are a lot of people like on Goodreads that I saw that agree with me on this book was just so unnecessary, and I don't think it really progressed the story or the characters all that much. I didn't like it. I didn't like the direction that it went in, and it made me really sad because I did love the first book so much, but I didn't like this book. So then I picked up Delirium by Lauren Oliver, which is the first book in the Delirium trilogy. It's a dystopian that is in this world where love is viewed as a disease. So I believe when you're like 18, you get this procedure that makes you immune to love. And so you can probably guess where the story is going. We follow a character that does the unthinkable and falls in love. I gave this 3.5 stars, which again, I'm going to bring up the fact that I was in a reading slump, which I'm going to contribute to why I didn't like this book as much as I thought I was going to. I did give it 3 stars, which is like a solid good rating. Like, I liked it. It did take me like a very long time to get through, which I think whenever I like reading books in the shortest amount of sittings, I think I enjoy them more, whereas when I drag them out, I like start to forget stuff that happened at the beginning because I'm like have a horrible memory when it comes to books, and just dragging it out makes me enjoy it a little bit less because I am constantly being like pulled out of the story, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I'm going to contribute my lower rating to the reading slump, but I still did enjoy this. What I didn't realize from this book when I always like read the synopsis, I always thought it was just like romantic love that they thought was a disease, but it's actually like any kind of love to like your children or anything like that, friends, stuff like that. Definitely made me like question and wonder about the society even more. I think the way that this book was written was done really well, like the way that the society worked and how, you know, the stuff that you get when you're in love was viewed as like symptoms of like you're getting this disease. If you get like butterflies in your stomach, you get nervous around somebody, things like that. Daydreaming is viewed as like a symptom of this like horrible disease that's gonna kill you. I thought that that was all just very cleverly done in the way it was, and I thought the writing was good. Like, honestly, there wasn't anything really bad about the story. I mean, it was a very like stereotypical dystopian kind of story, but I never get sick of those kind of things. But again, I think it was just because of my reading slump and it took me so long to get through this book that I just didn't give it that higher rating that I probably would have. But I am going to read the sequel because I did enjoy it enough to move on to the rest of the books, and I do think I'm going to enjoy it a little bit more, learning more about the society and what's going to happen next. And then the last book that I read in May was Snow City by G.A. Catherines. This book was sent to me in exchange for an honest review from the author, so if you would like to watch that review, I will leave a link to it up in a card in the corner. I gave this book like 1.5 stars. As I said, if you want to learn more about it or why I gave it that rating, you can click the link because I don't really want to repeat myself and all the things that I didn't like about this book in this video. Yeah, those are all of the books that I read in April and May. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. And yeah, that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!